This is your project introduction to the Needle Felted Birds project. So the project objectives are to apply the process of 3D needle felting to create a bird that uses at least 3 different colors of wool. You're going to recreate the color organization and patterns of the bird using roving wool. We're using core wool, roving wool, and needle felting to create a variety of shapes, forms, and details. And we're using excellent craftsmanship with the materials by removing stray fibers, keeping all shapes flattened on the forms, include details in the design of the bird, and creating a product that looks well made and finished. So these are some examples of needle felted birds. Note that we're aiming for realism, not cartoony. Now, we do want to create a bird that can physically stand on its own. So we actually have plastic eyes. We can create the beak using felt, flattened felt, and we have wire for the feet. And you can see how they organized the colors of the wool in separate sections. We're aiming to go beyond this. This is a little too simple. You can see that there's some stray fibers there. And these birds just look cartoony and not very finished. There are some requirements for your needle felted bird sculpture. We want to create several forms that serve as the foundation for the form of your bird. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Your work must be 3-dimensional. It must resemble your specific bird. The bird should be realistic looking. The body must be tightly needle felted. You use at least 3 colors of roving wool. This does not include the core wool. And it must be physically balanced and stand on its own. And as I said, we can use wire for the feet. And your completed sculpture should be about 3 to 4 inches tall. We are not making a life-size bird, but we're not making something super small. Now, these are some examples of needle felted birds. This one, obviously, because the fibers look more loose, it just needs more of the needle felting process versus this one that seems very tight. But you should be choosing a bird that you are capable of doing, right? These birds are possible. Now, this bird is possible, but it's very detailed. So if you do not have enough time for this level of detail, I don't suggest choosing the most detailed bird ever. And we want the bird to be able to stand. So I do not suggest creating a bird with the wings open, but you can needle felt separate wings on top of the form. So you're going to begin by choosing a bird for your project, and you can do a little bit of researching. However, there are many great examples of 3D needle felting, but please do not just copy another person's design. Even if you like the design, you need to use the reference photos of your bird to help understand the form and the color organization of that bird. And don't just think, well, I'll change the color. So you're going to collect a couple reference photos and submit them into the assignment, which I will be checking. So for my example, I collected my reference photos of my selected bird, and you should find at least 4 reference photos of your bird. They should be actual photos, and we should see the bird from different angles. And I actually gave you some suggested websites. I found this website from Cornell University, which is all about birds, so you can search through there. And there's also these websites that give us high quality images. Don't just do a Google search, look for high quality images. So for my example, I chose a western bluebird, which actually lives in our area. And this is a side view photo. I also found a couple more side views. Obviously the body looks a little different, right? It's more puffed out here, but I get a good idea of the beak. And then I also found some front views and some back views. You need to find different views of the bird so you understand the forms that you need to create. Specifically, you'll have to create the form for the body, the head and the neck, and the tail area. And you need to see how the colors are actually organized on your bird. After I checked your reference photos, then you can actually move on to your project. So here's a little overview of the project steps. So you're going to reference your photos, right? Different views. And on paper, you're going to create a simple sketch. You need to sketch out the shapes that you'll need to create. So I sketched a side view and a front view. So based on my bird, I understand that I'm going to have to make a form that's kind of like this egg form. I'll need a form for the head, as well as eventually a part for the tail and the wings. For this project, you're going to start building your form using core wool. No color yet. Do not start with color because that's just going to waste a lot of the wool. We can build our armature, our form, just using core wool. So to begin working, you'll need your cushion and you'll need your needle, and then you need some of this core wool. The core wool is a beige-ish kind of color, and again, it creates the form. So I have my reference photos and I also have my sketch here. So based on my sketch, I'm taking my core wool and I've been needle felting this to create this particular form. It's a little too narrow right now, which means I will need to add more of this core wool. Now work with small bits. You don't need a lot of it to start. Though when you add more, of course, you can wrap the wool onto itself. But as you're felting, you need to keep the shapes in mind. Pay attention to the form that you're currently working on. And right now it is still too squishy, so I know I need to keep doing the felting process. Now, you don't necessarily have to make the form the exact size, though it appears I'm getting there, but it's still a little too narrow. So I can still work in sections. I can fold the wool and just work on one side of it. So again, looking at the parts, you are needle felting first the body, and then you can slowly add the other features for the beginning of the tail and the head. It will depend on the type of bird, but as you can see in this example here, this is the body for the beginning of the bird. Here you can see they have a photo reference. There is the body with the head and the tail, and then they slowly apply the color. My next step is adding the head, and I actually started needle felting just the head on its own. And then you do want to have a little bit of this fluff on the end. This will actually help you in order to attach it. But in order to attach these two pieces together, right? I've been needle felting this form here. I've been needle felting the head over and over, adding a little more of the wool, but I can actually attach this and I can use this extra fluff to help me. So again, looking at my sketch, looking at my photo references, right? You don't want to you can't just like stick it on here. You need to actually literally needle felt it onto the actual form. So I'm going to place it more up here, and you want to watch out where your fingers are. But with this fluffy part here, I'm going to actually fold it onto the form itself and needle felt those fibers onto the body. Now at some point you're going to need to apply color to the form of your bird, just as you can see in this image here, right? That's the core wool, and they're applying the color on top. For your images, definitely look at your photos and notice how the colors are organized. So I'm actually going to start here. I'm not going to start with the head. I'm going to start with the breast of the bird. So in this area here, I notice I can use some of this orangey kind of color. Look at the colors I have available. You really don't need a lot because you can layer more and more color on top. I actually used my scissors to cut some of this. I don't want a lot of it. And you just lay it on top of your form, and I'm going to actually spread it out a little bit because I don't want just stripes. And again, you take your needle and you just gently needle felt, and it starts to adhere. It sticks the color onto the surface. And far away you can see how it starts to blend, but up close you can see the actual sections. Again, I can take another piece and layer it on here. And you can always allow some of that core wool to show. You do not need to cover all of that core wool. So that was your preview of our project.